From the United Nations Office to the African Union, this is She Stands for Peace. I am Dr. Yemisi Akimbobola, and in this podcast, I speak with thought leaders and peace builders who share their reflections and best practices towards achieving objectives of the Women, Peace and Security Agenda in Africa. In this episode, I'm joined by SRSG Parfait Onyanga-Anyanga, Special Representative to the African Union and Head of the United Nations Office to the African Union. I'm also joined by Madam Bineta Diop, the African Union's Special Envoy on Women, Peace and Security. SRSG Parfait Onyanga-Anyanga joins me from Addis Ababa, and Madam Bineta Diop joins me from Dakar. And we have a conversation about coordinating the activities of stakeholders towards achieving the Women, Peace and Security Agenda. SRSG Parfait Anyanga and Madam Bineta Diop, it's a pleasure to speak with you today. You both have a wealth of history and experience in the Women, Peace and Security Agenda. And SRSG Parfait, if it's okay for me to call you that. And you were until recently the UN Special Envoy to the Horn of Africa. And in early 2022, you took over from the previous head of the United Nations Office to the African Union. And of course, Madam Diop, you are currently the AU's Special Envoy on Women, Peace and Security and President of FEM Africa Solidarité. But you both represent two key multilateral organizations that through the UNOU come together to work in partnership to achieve peace and security in Africa, and the WPS agenda being one of those key aspects. So, Madam Diop, you and I have spoken previously on the first season of this podcast. So I'm going to direct my first question, if I may, to SRSG Parfait. SRSG Parfait, how have you found the first few months of your role at UNOU, and what do you see as the main priorities for this very important partnership?
Thank you very much, MC, for having me and for the opportunity to come together with my dear sister, Special Envoy, Madame Diop, whom I see as an amazing leader, a champion of women, peace and security issues continent-wide and actually globally. It's been thrilling. It's been really an amazing opportunity for me. That's my very first time actually to engage so directly with the African Union on African matters, which, as you know, is really the core of the UN business. And so I really don't know anyone who works in my field who will not be thrilled by the opportunity to really help change the realities on the ground. And as we speak, my heart goes out to the people of this region, the Horn of Africa, and the continent as a whole. And as you know, this horn is going through a very, really devastating drought. And I think of the women and girls of Somalia, Ethiopia, Kenya. For those are, the very countries where, unfortunately, this situation is going on. And as the whole world's attentions, and for a good reason, turn onto the situation in Ukraine and its implications globally, including here in Africa, I feel really privileged to be able to serve the Secretary General while serving also the people of Africa through the implementation of the joint framework between our two organizations. So that's what I can say as far as these few months are concerned.
Thank you very much. And you mentioned there about Somalia and some of the countries that you've worked in, because I know that this is not your first time of both you and Madam Diop working together. You've been on missions to Somalia. You've both, in your own capacities, contributed to the peace processes in Burundi, for example. So SRSG Parfait, you previously headed the UN office in Burundi to set up the post-conflict reconstruction of the country. And Madam Diop, you are one of the key players in the reconciliation process in Burundi, organizing groups of women in that process for the negotiation of peace. So reflecting on your experiences in reconciliation and post-conflict reconstruction, how would you like to see agencies, organizations like the AU, like the UN, work better together? And I'd like to pose that question first to Madam Diop.
Thank you so much. And let me say how delighted I am to be with my brother, SRSG, Parfait Onyanga-Anyanga. You know, this is the he for she. And I think really bringing us together to discuss the Women, Peace and Security agenda for me is what we think should be done. And Parfait that I know have worked not just for peace and security in the continent. I have been in contact with him in many theater of war, where we know that women are, the victims and are being targeted deliberately, but which need to be part of the reconstruction. And we see that SRSG have been really at the core to make sure that women are involved and participate in reconstruction from the UN side. Of course, the United Nations is the key partners of the African Union when it comes to peace and security. The AU being the political body where we take the decisions, but we know that the United Nations have the capacity and the knowledge and the expertise to support the African Union. So I think this is the platform that we are building together, and having Africans like my brother Parfait, those who are making the synergy, because you need to have people who understand the terrain like him to say, okay, the AU, you are that political body, but we have the expertise and we are here to service the African continent. So that partnership have been built by people like him in the field, but now we can see it more at the African Union level, because it's one thing to be at the country level and make it happen. And this is what we've seen when he come in Burundi, in Somalia, in so many in the Horn of Africa. But now, practically, we can see the collaboration between UNOAU and the African Union on many issues, including women, peace, and security. So you can see that our podcast today come perfectly on time to make sure that we talk about how we're going to continue the partnership that we have already established, but how do we scale it up? How do we bring it to the level of being institutionalized, as I say, as program, and make sure that we impact on the life of the ordinary citizen, the ordinary women that we know that are the one that we are servicing, both of us, my brother and myself, for the continent.
Thank you, Madam Diop. And SRSG Parfait, how would you respond to that, to institutionalize the process and the work that you're trying to do?
100% in agreement. This is the way to go. There is no way out. The partnership between the UN and the AU heads from the common understanding between our two institutions and between our two bosses that regardless of mandate, strength, capacities of each of our institutions taken, separately, given the magnitude of the challenges facing the continent, none of our institutions can on their own and alone address the multifaceted challenges of the continent. So it is really this common understanding that we can only be successful if we come together. And this is precisely what was done by signing this partnership agreement between Secretary General Guterres and his brother and friend, AU chairperson Musa Faki Mahamat. They really came together in a strong expression of their common faith in multilateralism. And by doing so, they really provided all of us not only the policy guidance, but the leadership to be joint actors in the field wherever we are. And I can simply say that really, I, for one, was one of the beneficiaries even before the signing of this partnership agreement of the effort that Madame Diop and other women made in a place like Burundi. When I arrived in the country was midway in the second term of the government that came from the peace agreement. And this is where I saw the amazing job that was done. But yet you can realize that it is true that peace is not only indeed the absence of war, because the women that I found on the ground were still hurting. I will never forget that really Burundian women leader who came to me speaking in Kirundi and with an interpreter who told me that, sir, thank you for everything you're doing here, but how would it be possible that our country is equipped with the right forensics to ensure that those men, those people who have perpetrated sexual violence against women are made accountable, face justice? And I stayed with that question, really harrowing, very painful, even though the lady had forgotten. She was moving on, but she was thinking about the future and still, expecting the UN, working with the AU, of course, to come together with solutions to the issue that they face. And this is where I see really the close link in which Madame Diop has been doing, providing extraordinary leadership. The link between 1325 and Resolution 1820 that has criminalized violence against women. And this is where I fully agree with her. Our teams have been really working together, and they are now in the process of developing concrete joint programs that will enable us to really make sure that we become more effective throughout the conflict cycle, from early warning to prevention to, as we do it also with Ambassador Bankole, to peace operations or joint visits, on the ground when it is required, to ensure that we really endeavor to provide the tools that would make it absolutely harder for any perpetrators to continue these offenses, and to give women and young girls really opportunities to dream for a better future. So I cannot be luckier to having the opportunity to team up with Madame Diop in this important endeavor.
Dr. Yamisi, if you allow me, just to take the case of Burundi. Burundi have total lessons. When President Nyerere, President Mandela took over after, and there was no negotiation happening in Arusha, what SRSG Parfait have alluded to. We African women, we went in solidarity to see Burundi, but we find the situation so dramatic because there was embargo, there was a lot of suffering, and the military took over. So we decided to say, let's really work on this peace, the mediation, bring women at the table. And I think that's where we say that in 1325, when negotiation is happening anywhere in the world, including Africa, women have to be at the table. And we accompany the women of Burundi, Hutu, Twa, Tutsi, to be at the table of negotiation, welcomed by Nyerere, who used the UN system to say, when the UN invites civil society, they give them the observer status. You see, you can always find ways in the political spheres to bring the women at the table. And now we have a framework. We have a network called FemWise, and we hope that we will be able to deploy women at a negotiation to support the country, and we need that gender lens. In Burundi, it happened, and that's why they signed the peace accord. And now SRSG Parfait is saying, when I came in, I now met the women to make sure that we implement that agreement. And that is where UN is also supporting the country to make sure that we have the program implemented to respond to the people. Reconstruction, rehabilitation, the integration of the child soldiers, everything is being doing at the country level. So really, I think if we look at Burundi, it's a case that we can learn lesson and what have happened and the limitation. Because one of the limit that we have, the challenge we face is the justice issue as well. And then to bring those who to be accountable, those who have perpetrated violence. It's happening in DRC, but we need to do more. So now I do agree with my brother that we need to prevent. And we are working with UNOAU to support the women on the ground when it comes to prevention. And that's where we need to focus right now. And I'm very glad that our team, the Special Envoy team, the AU team, but the UNOAU team are discussing some of those possibilities as well. Thank you.
No, thank you, Madam Diop. I think you touch on two very important things around prevention, but also implementation. And indeed, you founded your organization in 1996 for the prevention and resolution of conflict in Africa, and also empowering women to take that leadership that you speak about in that process. And of course, SRSG, Parfait, we talked earlier on about you being former special envoy of the Horn of Africa, which is a region with long-standing conflict, poverty, vulnerability to climate change, but also has great economic potentials and potentials to return to that more democratic environment. So, with your experiences in cross agency collaborations as special envoys, and in the context that conflict prevention should always be the priority, what would you see as being the key challenges for conflict prevention, despite the various levels of collaboration? And what actions would you like to see the AU and the UN take in better coordinating for conflict prevention? So let's start with SRSG Parfait.
Well, thank you so very much. And again, maybe one word on what Special Envoy Diop has just said. I cannot agree more with her. Actually, whenever there are talks of making sure that women are around the negotiating table, it's maybe already too late, because it means that we were not able to prevent the situation from unraveling, and therefore conflict has already occurred. And that is the perennial problem of prevention. Of course, it's never too late to do good, but the point here with prevention, what is really difficult, first, prevention occurs in a context where you have a sovereign states. And therefore, as much as we, both the AU and the UN, or IGAD for that matter, can offer our good offices in support of peace processes in countries, it is first and foremost a national responsibility. Whereas the problem we face today is that when you look at most African countries, unfortunately, you have two major fault lines. The first one is the fact that we all live in very diverse countries, where ethnic differences are a fact. And if they are not based on ethnicity, differences will be based on regions. So this is geography, hopefully not too much on religion, but all these aspects, come to forth when, unfortunately, and which is, I think, the major problem we face, is the weaponization of diversity, which is absolutely dangerous. We should be proud and rich of our diversity, but when none too virtuous politicians and actors weaponize diversity, then it becomes a problem and a trigger for so many conflicts on the continent. Now, the second problem that we often also face is the tension that often exists between the center of our countries, some of them so big that it's actually very difficult to rule any of these territories from the center. And then you have this tension between the center and the periphery, a periphery that often feels neglected and not really given the means to accommodate its development and socio-economic needs. And therefore, you have tension that often, unfortunately, are not properly addressed. So what our institutions trying to do is to reaffirm the notion that peace does not result from war. Peace results from negotiations and from dialogue. And this, of course, is not something that any one of our institutions can impose. It's really something that we, through our good offices, our representation, the AU often, and regional organizations, of course, on the three principles of subsidiarity, on the principle of complementarity, and on the principle of comparative advantage. These are really the framework in which we work. And the earlier we come together through joint analysis and joint assessment of the situation on the ground, and the better our chances to make a difference on a situation that otherwise would be unraveling is what we need to do. It has been the case in the past, but no longer. I must say that some kind of misunderstanding and competition as to who should be the first responder can be a problem if we want to have as rapidly as possible interventions. And there is also a risk that by the multiplicity of actors on the ground, the parties may be tempted by some kind of forum shopping. and they would be cherry picking and almost sometimes of even dividing the actors, those who want to help. So that's why the UN and the AU have been absolutely deliberate about the fact that we must work together.
Let me jump on this and say one of the models that we have built and which SRSG Onyanga have been with us, with the Deputy Secretary General, Madam Amina Mohammed, and myself. We wanted to demonstrate in a way that it is possible to work together on joint activities. We traveled to West Africa, to the Corn of Africa, to North. We have been touring the areas of conflict in Africa. And when COVID even came, we were doing it online to visit Mozambique and to visit Mali with the women leaders of this continent. So, and what we see during those Solidarity mission together is to do the same assessment. And it's helped when we are together and we see the impact. When we went to Chad, for example, we realized the lake are shrinking and the women that have been benefiting from the product of the lake have been going far to make sure that they provide sustained livelihood to their population. And you could see that even to take firewoods, they are themselves exposed because they go far because of the climate change. So you find that for us to link the development agenda within the framework that have been signed by AU and UN and the peace security agenda, that are interlinked. So we came back to the Security Council together after making the common assessment to the Peace and Security Council of the AU and to the Security Council of the UN to tell them you cannot talk about women, peace, and security if you don't look into the development agenda as well. So providing the necessary support to the women that are on the ground because they're facing climate changes and other issues and the impact on them, we could see it. And most of them don't have job and have been enrolled by those who are the fighters there. They are the one engaging the young women because of the opportunity that they miss. So you need to look at it in a holistic way and how do you address the reconstruction of those countries. So it's not just security with the military. Of course, you need that to defeat the terrorists, but what you need more is also providing job to the young people to give them the hope and to the women also to engage with them so they see the future and be part of the future of their countries. The second issue that we find as a challenge, as you said, the African women, despite that we have seen progress when it comes to their leadership and participation, we see we don't have the right number yet. AU Commission Musafaki is doing his best in the recruitment, in the parity that have been put in place, and the UN system as well. But when you look at trickle it down, bring it to the grassroots, we need to engage our member state to make sure that also women leadership that we know matters, that we make sure that the women are there. Most of the time they will tell you, where are they? We don't see them. Like they see the men, but they don't see the women, while women represent more than 50% of the population and the youth. So that's why I think what we have done by putting in place the Africa Women Leaders Network, led by, President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, but many of us being part of it, including the men, because we have now the positive masculinity, the he for she, that are part of this process to make sure that we say, yeah, the women are there at national level. Now we have more than 30 national chapters where we portray the women leaders. And now one of the good practice that we have example is She Stand for Peace. Because we have shown together, AU and the UNOAU, that there are 20 African women here and there are 100 more, and we need to portray them, we need to show them and document what they have done. Because we don't want people to continue to deny that women have not contributed to bring peace. And that's where we are very much working with UNOAU and making sure that this project will continue and we show the face of the women. The third aspect that I want to highlight is accountability. You know, my office have been promoting national action plan and regional action plan on women, peace and security. That's part of my job, advocating. But together with UN at the country level, which have been very supportive. And this is the way, I think there are good practice that we need to show. The Stand for Peace is one, the Solidarity Mission is another one, but also the continental framework that we are doing to make sure that our member states are equipped and can report on WPS with the accountability framework. So we are working with UN, with centers of excellence at the ground level to equip our government to say, how many policy have you put in place on WPS? Do you have a national action plan? If not, together, can we help you? Because you are committed politically to implement it. If not, can we help you together to do it? You know, if they said, no, we don't have the policy, right, can we help you with expertise? If they say we don't have women participating as in the judges, in the court, how can we help you to scale it up? How can we train the judiciary? How can we train your peacekeeping before you deploy them? So these are some of the areas that we are working in implementing the security framework between AU and UN, but also the development framework between the two organizations. So we are in that mood, and I'm sure that through my brother, leadership, we will reach there.
Thank you, absolutely. And I know you'd want to respond to that, but I just want to jump on a couple of the points that Madam Diop pointed out. So you've highlighted a number of achievements that you've done together. You also highlight the Security Council. So you got the United Nations Security Council, you got the African Union Peace and Security Council, both of them being key decision-making organs in that full cycle peace building process. So the conflict prevention, the resolution, the implementation, the agreements, the participation of women. So reflecting on all of that a bit more, particularly looking at the UN Security Council and the AU Peace and Security Council, what would you see as the major achievements of both councils working together in partnership? And how would you like to see that partnership between these two security councils strengthened as two very important decision-making organs on the continent and globally as well? Shall we start with Madam Diop?
Thank you so much, because this is our dream, to see the two institutions effectively, implementing together what they have signed. And I think this is why SRSG and myself will continue to be at the front to bring this to happen in action. Because what we need is to do action. We might say, okay, we sign it, we might have our wish, but what we need to do is to show that we can do it together. And one of the areas, as I said, from our missions, so many times I have invited SRSG to come at the Peace and Security Council meeting. So for both of us to report on either during the October or in closed session in many sessions, just to highlight some of the issues that we both have seen, my office, their office, but also the AU Department for Peace and Security. So around the women, peace and security, we are already building that collaboration to show to the Peace and Security Council that it is possible. So many times member states are inviting both of us, to say, come and report, not just at the AU level, but at the UN level. Even last month, I was just on a panel on 1925 in New York. So those are the collaboration on reporting, bringing the voices of those who are in the terrain, but making sure also that the outcome of the document, whatever, reflect our common vision. So for me, it's really the action. We need to show those action. And those systems will work if you have the human touch. I call it the people themselves, because this is the one that are animating the two organs, And we need to work together in New York and work together in Addis Ababa with our member states that are sitting there. So I think our joint program, our joint mission, and our joint reporting process and being in the terrain together will help us to go to the two institutions and see this is what we have done, and they will see the implementation. So me, I'm somebody that when I see a document, I read it once, but I say how I can translate it to the field, because this is where the women are, and this is where they want us to see in action.
Absolutely. And SRSG Parfait, so you have a call there to report together to the two security councils. What are your thoughts on that?
No, absolutely. And we're doing it already. And certainly we need to do even more of that. But Yemsi, I think when you listen to Madame Diop, this is where you realize how much leadership matters. And this is a leadership that is down to earth, compassionate, passionate about the why we're doing this, the people for whom we are engaging. It makes a big difference. And this is where I feel personally very privileged to be serving in this position at this very moment. As we said before, in 2017, April, both our leaders came together sharing this common faith in multilateralism. They decided to establish this joint framework. And then a few months later, in January 2018, they come up with having this holistic vision of the need to work both on the peace and development field. They come up with a UN framework on the implementation of AU Agenda 2063 and GS 2030. And this is what Special Envoy Diop was referring to, and in which, together with the DSG, I've been also, again, very privileged to be with them on the ground, to see these two amazing leaders addressing the concerns of development as a whole, not only on women-related issues, but development as a whole, as they affect most particularly women, has been for me an amazing, learning process and absolutely inspiring. So we always have to have this nexus very much present in our minds as we try to engage. And therefore, having the right policy and normative framework is absolutely important. And this is what, at the principal level, you get a get-go from the leadership of the two institutions. And when asked how we was seeing the partnership between the AU and the UN, Secretary General Guterres said he believed that it is going through what he calls a quantum leap, that this is where he wanted to be, really to serve as a pillar for multilateralism, especially as we see our world so embattled with so much polarization and divergences of views that makes it so hard to focus on the issues that really still affect so many communities, especially in Africa. So I look forward to really pursuing this important endeavor, and it's been my privilege since April of this year to regularly brief AU Peace and Security Council on matters that pertain to our common agenda for peace and security in Africa.
Thank you so much for those candid responses. And in the UN Secretary General's 2021 report on the AU-UN partnership framework, he said that COVID-19 pandemic brought with it, and I quote him, heightened political tensions, human rights challenges, and restricted civic space. So now, we're in 2022, the world is trying to move on with the realities that COVID-19 is here to stay, at least for the time being. But the pandemic brought with it its challenges, the difficulties of, for example, face-to-face negotiations, the elections that were impacted, etc., and therefore had impact on the peace and security efforts. How are you working differently to achieve the women, peace and security agenda in a COVID-19 environment? And of course, knowing that Africa still faces its own various epidemics like Ebola, for example. Are there new approaches you'd like member states to take to achieve the women, peace and security objectives in this context? Madam Diop, you take the question first.
Dr. Messi, let me say that we are really living a difficult time because we have seen COVID-19, which we call the silent pandemic, because the level of violence against women even not just in conflict zone, but everywhere at home, not just in Africa, but globally. So I think that that's what we have seen the impact on COVID, which was started with a health issue, but again, become an economic issue, a social issues between the people. So really, it dismantled the whole social fabric, including in Africa, even though we have been the continent maybe less with less the death toll, but we know that they have impacted economically in our continent. We have seen right now just not COVID, but the Ukraine war, because this whole thing make us vulnerable, to be facing conflict that are emerging. So if we come back to the issue of COVID, of course there was challenges and also opportunities. The challenges that the women have faced, as I described them, but some of those opportunities, what I saw women doing on the ground, even in a refugee camp, they were the one doing the mask immediately. In the refugee camp, I have seen teaching how to use the water, how to make sure that they distribute the equipment, and training people how to address some of those issues in the society, which they didn't have that knowledge before. So they were the one to be on the ground. I have seen in many countries, civil society giving food, distributing food, knocking doors, despite the risk that they have been taking. And we saw also the benefit of using this new technology that we are using today. Not meeting one another, but we find another way. The media, but also new technology have helped us to communicate, to continue to be together as well. So I think there was some opportunities. It's now how do we manage those? How do we make sure that our member state continue to talk about having internal their own vaccine? That's the big debate, because now our population that have been vaccinated is very minimum compared to other continents. And I think that's why at the African Union, we are talking about putting centers that will be able to produce also the vaccine for our continent, not just for COVID, but for other issues. And I think also that the fact they're talking about having more infrastructure, transforming our agriculture sector and so on. So the big crises always give us opportunity to build back better. So we don't miss this opportunity. And by doing that, what we need is to make sure that we bring the people, not just the politicians, but those who have the expertise, those who have the knowledge, involve the university in the research, involve the technical people. We have so many young people, brilliant. The other day I was talking to a young woman who is nuclear scientist, young girl, 20 something. And I said, this is wonderful. African women have talent. The young women have talent. When we were in Addis the other day with the UNOAU and the ECA, we bring young people that are leaders in their own areas. But you see young people that are owning a television, young people that are in industries, young people that are trying to see how to reach to the moon. So this is the where we need to encourage them, to support them, to mentor them, to coach them, but also as I said, is co-leadership of the young people. And we need to build back better with our population. So COVID have brought a lot of challenges to us, but also opportunities. It's time for us as people of Africa, but supported by these two institutions. I think the Secretary General have made this on the food, looking into how do we provide to the African continent, but also to the whole world. And I think this is even in the next coming General Assembly, but also the African Union have put this as a priority, the issue of the food security as the year of the thematic on nutrition. So all these initiatives, we need to look at the solutions, because for me, initiatives are great. But if we are able to identify good initiatives that can be leapfrog from one to another, one country to another, I'm sure that we can have the bigger impact for this opportunity of this big crisis that the whole world is going through right now.
Thank you, Madam Diop. So, addressing the challenges, exploiting the opportunities, building back better with intergenerational dialogue and co-partnership, to sum up what Madam Diop was saying. So, how do you envision moving on from a COVID-19 environment or with a COVID-19 reality, SRSG Parfait?
Madam Diop has provided a very comprehensive response. It speaks to really the cascade of challenges, the compounded challenges that the continent has faced, and the world for that matter, during this COVID pandemic crisis. I can simply say that Madam Diop is absolutely right. These were indeed daunting challenges, but of course also providing us with unique opportunities to act. And the one example I have in mind is going back to February 2020 in South Sudan. The world was just starting to cope with this pandemic. IGAD and the AU, while in Juba on the ground, could not be able to push in envoys to help facilitate the resumption and the implementation of the revitalized peace agreement. And we really didn't know what to do. And this is where, South Sudan surprised us. And both leaders, President Salva Kiir and his counterpart, Dr. Riek Machar, the first vice president, managed to get an agreement that took all of us by surprise. And they managed on their own, while international borders were closed, to get things going. We went there only late to try to indeed encourage and support this initiative that came from within. And this really brings me to say one really important thing, and I've been discussing this with you and colleagues, that we need to do more in terms of empowering nations, in terms of helping countries to build their own coping mechanisms, their own response mechanisms, so that when we are not there, and it would also take away the notion that mediation is always something that comes from outside. And this is really what we need to do. And I think the work that Special Envoy really Diop has been doing with establishing the network of women leaders in countries, 35, 30, 40 plus chapters, of those women who are on the ground across political affiliations and religions and ethnicity background. They come together as a community of responsible actors who wants to bring durable solutions to the problems they face. So it really speaks to the importance of building resilience within societies, and doing it across generations is absolutely important. And this is where I see hope in the future, in spite of everything that seems to be discouraging and rather spreading very negative image of or outlook of what the future holds. I think we have to remain prisoners of hope, as Desmond Tutu will put it, so that we keep working hand in hand with the level of leadership and passion and vision that you have just heard during this really inspiring exchange, so that we can continue to serve this continent to the best of our ability.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Diop. Thank you, SRSG Parfait. It's been an amazing experience listening to you today and sharing your experience with me. And so, briefly, to finish off our conversation today, if there was one action you would like our listeners here today to take in relation to what we talked about, what would that be? Madam Diop, you go first.
Mobilizing women across rural women everywhere through the media to discuss, but also monitoring those violence wherever it happened, to make sure that we have the hotline where the women will report to say this is happening, so you prevent it at the time. And we have seen it, at the largest scale in our continent, but with the women, engaging them with the young population can also reduce the tension that we have seen during electoral process, especially during and after.
So mobilize, monitor, and mediate. SRSG Parfait, what are your final words and actions that you'd want listeners to take?
Wonderful to listen, and wonderful really to be in this amazing company with my dear sister, Special Envoy, Madame Diop. And with you, EMC, thank you for bringing us together and for making She Stands for Peace such a resounding podcast and a force for good. This is really an amazing opportunity to contribute significantly to the very issues that really occupy us day in, day out, working in Africa. I can simply add to this that we have an amazing opportunity to transform this continent. Whoever has been listening, I will simply say, don't be a bystander. Embrace a cause. Be an agent for change. And therefore, in the various areas that Special Envoy Diop has outlined, I do believe that there is room for each and everyone. The exchange that we have just held cannot be left to specialists or to experts or to politicians. Actually, they need your help, and therefore be part of the change. And I do believe that the opportunities for us to transform this continent are immense and still untapped. And therefore, get in a good company and let's do it together.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much, Madam Bineta Diop, and thank you so much, SRSG, Parfait, Onyanga-Anyanga, for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. Thank you for listening to She Stands for Peace, the podcast series where thought leaders and peace builders share their reflections and best practices in the women, peace and security agenda in Africa. I am Dr. Yemisi Akimbobola, and this podcast was produced by the United Nations Office to the African Union with the generous support of the Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Don't forget to join the conversation using the hashtag She Stands for Peace.